President Trump signed sweeping tariffs on goods imported from Mexico, Canada, and China, some as high as 25%. And they're likely to have a major impact on what you pay.
With egg prices sitting at record highs, some people are going with another option, buying their own chickens to bring breakfast to the backyard.
This morning, government data shows egg prices have declined for the first time since October. The average price for a dozen grade A eggs fell to $5.12 in April.
In grocery aisles across Texas and Ohio, shoppers froze in disbelief as egg prices shot up to nearly $5 a dozen. But the real surprise wasn't the number on the tag. Printed in bold letters across the carton were the words, "Product of Brazil, packed in Turkey." At that very moment, millions of American eggs sat untouched on farms at home, filling storage units and eventually being dumped in staggering quantities. What began as a policy meant to protect local producers has turned into a policy choking them instead. Across the northern border, Canada, once one of America's most dependable buyers, has abruptly cancelled a massive order of over 170 million dozen eggs, leaving farmers with overflowing stock and collapsing profits. The economic blow is spreading from small-town barns to national markets, unraveling plans once expected to fuel agriculture well into next year. The irony is bitter. While foreign imports line supermarket shelves, American farmers can barely keep their doors open. So, how did a policy meant to defend domestic agriculture end up destroying it? And if eggs are only the beginning, what happens when larger parts of the food system start to crumble next? The trouble started quietly. No breaking headlines, no sudden announcement, only a growing confusion spreading through grocery aisles. In Texas and Ohio, shoppers stared at price tags that made no sense. Nearly $5 for a dozen eggs, higher than anything seen in months. American eggs were a symbol of steady exports, a reliable product that moved easily across borders to markets in Canada, Japan, and throughout Asia. In 2024, nearly 172 million dozen eggs were shipped abroad, feeding both global demand and domestic pride. But by the middle of 2025, that foundation began to shake. The first blow came from a devastating avian flu outbreak that forced farmers to cull more than 38 million hens. Production costs soared, supply chains slowed, and confidence from international buyers began to fade. Then, a policy shift that was supposed to bring relief only made matters worse. In an attempt to strengthen domestic agriculture, new tariffs were introduced under the Trump administration, aimed at favoring American farmers. Instead, they set off a domino effect of withdrawal and rejection. Canada, one of the United States' largest and most reliable customers, quietly cancelled major contracts and turned to suppliers in Brazil and the European Union. There were no angry press statements or televised debates, just quiet decisions that reshaped an entire industry. By early summer, the United States found itself with a staggering surplus of more than 60 million eggs, and no market willing to buy them. What was once a steady business model began to look like a slow-motion collapse, and the trust that took years to build evaporated almost overnight. In states like Iowa, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, the toll has been relentless. Massive poultry farms have been forced to scale back, and smaller ones have shut down packing lines completely. Cold storage units designed to hold products for only short periods are overflowing with eggs that have no destination. On paper, the United States still holds its title as an agricultural powerhouse, but the reality sitting in refrigerated containers at ports tells a different story. Eggs are abundant, yet the demand is missing. The disconnect between supply and market has left farmers stranded, struggling to stay afloat, while warehouses fill with unsold stock. Iowa, often called the heart of America's egg industry, has been hit particularly hard. Over 12 million dozen eggs have been sitting in cold storage in less than 3 months. The system meant to preserve food temporarily is now buckling under the weight of its own excess. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 4 states, Indiana, Ohio, Missouri, and Minnesota, reported egg surpluses 2.5 times higher than the same period last year. Every passing day adds more to preservation costs, while farmers' cash flow disappears. Prices have fallen sharply, squeezing small and medium farms that depend on quick sales to survive. The National Egg Producers Association reports that in the second quarter of 2025 alone, 64 medium and small-sized farms vanished from the market. Nearly half of them were family-owned, some spanning 3 generations. Barns that once echoed with the sounds of life now stand silent, padlocked and empty. There are no large demonstrations or televised protests, but at local farmers' markets the change is visible. The number of egg stalls has shrunk dramatically, and those that remain are selling at prices as low as 60 to 70 cents per dozen, barely enough to cover costs. The irony deepens at supermarkets, where consumers still pay more than $4 for the same dozen eggs. The gap between farm and shelf has nothing to do with greed. It reflects a breakdown in the distribution system itself. The bottlenecks are everywhere. Transport routes delayed, inspections backed up, certifications stalled, and export channels clogged. Eggs cannot move out of storage, but neither can they reach ordinary families. As the supply chain jams at every level, the damage ripples outward, hitting not only farmers, but also packing plants, logistics firms, and processing facilities that turn eggs into products for restaurants and the broader food industry. Shift reductions, layoffs, and partial shutdowns are becoming common across multiple states. The once smooth engine of American agriculture is now sputtering. In Nebraska, the State Agricultural Board released a startling report showing that 17% of farmers surveyed had postponed or cancelled plans to expand barns for the 2026 season. It marks the steepest drop in over 10 years. It is not that these farmers have lost their will to work, it's that they no longer know whether their efforts will pay off. With buyers uncertain and markets unpredictable, expansion has become too risky. Farmers, long viewed as the backbone of American self-reliance, are quietly retreating. They are the first to absorb the shock when confidence in the system collapses. Meanwhile, prices continue to defy logic. Through the second quarter of 2025, egg prices at major retailers like Walmart, Kroger, and Safeway stayed between $3.80 and $5.20 per dozen, depending on the region. It's the third highest price level in 15 years, trailing only the avian flu crisis of 2022 and the inflation surge of 2023. But what unsettles consumers isn't just the cost, it's the contradiction behind it. They read about farmers dumping millions of eggs, hear that Canada and other countries have turned away from American suppliers, and yet see only imported cartons when they walk into a supermarket. The disconnect between abundance and accessibility has left shoppers frustrated and confused. A new study from Purdue University surveyed over 2,400 residents across the Midwest and found that 68% had no clear idea why this was happening. More than half said they found it absurd that American eggs were being rejected abroad while families at home could barely afford them. The lack of explanation has created a sense of disillusionment that stretches beyond economics. Consumers feel ignored, left out of a system that was supposed to serve them. They pay taxes, fund agricultural support programs, and still find themselves priced out of basic necessities. Online discussions reflect that frustration. On community forums and Facebook groups, especially among retirees and former industry workers, the same question keeps appearing. Why is the United States importing eggs while domestic ones are being destroyed? One Ohio resident shared that their local store was selling Brazilian eggs for nearly $5 a dozen, while only a few miles away, a nearby farm had been forced to shut down from oversupply. The story has been echoed hundreds of times across different states, documented by the non-profit organization Consumer Voices. These accounts reveal more than economic distress. They expose a growing sense of betrayal among people who believed in the idea of American self-sufficiency. For many, the crisis cuts deeper than money. It touches on identity, on the belief that the nation could always depend on its own farmers to provide. To see that system crumble while imported goods flood the shelves feels like something far greater than a trade issue. It feels like a loss of control. In interviews, older farmers describe the moment as a turning point, one where the country seems to have drifted away from its own foundations. They speak with disbelief about seeing truckloads of eggs dumped while foreign imports dominate store shelves. The emotional toll is as heavy as the financial one, with entire communities left uncertain about their future. The broader picture is grim. The policies meant to protect American agriculture have ended up weakening it, leaving both farmers and consumers in a state of confusion. Market confidence has eroded, trust between nations has been shaken, and within the country the disconnect between supply and price has deepened divisions. Every link in the chain from farm to table feels strained. The heart of the issue lies not in the eggs themselves, but in what they represent. A fractured system that no longer seems to work in anyone's favor. American agriculture, long seen as a symbol of reliability, now faces doubts about its ability to sustain itself in a rapidly shifting global economy. Farmers wonder if they can rebuild trust with buyers. Consumers question if they will ever see fair prices again. And policymakers face the growing realization that protectionist moves can sometimes protect nothing at all. The shelves are stocked, but not with what they should be. The farms are full, but their gates are closing. And the question grows harder to ignore. If the United States cannot even safeguard something as small as its own eggs, can they truly be trusted? And the impact is spreading further than anyone expected. Across the country, low-income families are cutting back on what used to be simple, affordable meals. Eggs, once a staple of the American breakfast table, are slowly disappearing from weekly menus. According to Feeding America, the number of households eating eggs only once a week has climbed by 11% compared to last year. The shift is most visible in middle-income states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, where the contradiction between overflowing warehouses and struggling dinner tables grows more difficult to ignore. For decades, America's food supply system was praised as one of the most reliable and efficient in the world. It was seen as flexible, resilient, and always capable of putting its people first. That confidence is now fading. Consumers are beginning to see a different reality, one where the system works smoothly only as long as trust holds it together. A professor from the University of Minnesota summed it up perfectly. Eggs were never meant to be a crisis commodity, but when people start to feel that even the basics are out of their reach, they begin to question everything else. What started as a story about rising prices has turned into something much larger. Conversations about eggs have moved beyond kitchen tables and into public debates, town halls, and even campaign speeches. The reason is simple. Eggs are no longer just a food item. They've become a symbol of how fragile the country's economic and agricultural balance has become. And behind every carton, a larger question is taking shape. Is the United States losing control over its own food supply? According to recent data from the US Department of Agriculture, egg exports in the first half of 2025 dropped nearly 38% compared to the same period last year. That number doesn't only reflect lost sales, it signals a loss of confidence. Nations that once relied heavily on American farms are now walking away. Canada, which used to import nearly 40% of its eggs from the United States, has shifted towards suppliers in Brazil and Europe. Mexico, Japan, and Singapore have begun diversifying their sources, spreading contracts across new partners to avoid depending too much on any single one. No country has openly declared that American eggs are off the table, but their trade agreements say it all. New contracts with Brazil, Spain, and Portugal show a clear direction. Trust in US agriculture can no longer be taken for granted, and the issue is much bigger than eggs. US corn exports have fallen by 22% as buyers across Asia now prefer Argentine suppliers. Sales of beef and powdered milk have also declined sharply, hit by Europe's tighter environmental rules, higher shipping costs, and the unpredictability of US trade policy. The warning signs are clear. Eggs have become a symbol of imbalance, a reminder that no system, no matter how vast, can survive once its foundation of trust starts to crumble. Farmers are losing faith in policy, consumers are losing faith in value, and international partners are losing faith in reliability. One small product has exposed cracks running through the entire structure of American agriculture and trade. What do you think? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in and see you in the next one.